Hey everybody, Ryan Smith from Holiday Bliss. I hope you guys are having a great kickoff to the spring. We're gonna hit 80 degrees today in the Twin Cities. And one of the things that I teed up as we were going through the Easter front entry video is that I really love gardening in addition to Christmas. And so over the course of the next few months, I'm gonna be taking you guys along as we go through some gardening projects, as we plant up the containers for spring and summer. But we also have a really major backyard project that we're undertaking this spring, and we're trying to remediate some drainage issues and trying to do some things around the pool deck. So thought it would be good to take you through, show you what we're dealing with as a before, talk about what our long-term goal and vision is for that space, and then as we're actually making progress, as we're going through the actual work, I will bring you guys along. So let's go ahead and get started. You are familiar with the front of the house because you've seen it decorated for Christmas, but we're going to take you along to the back and show you what we've got going on back there. And hopefully you guys will find this inspirational, and we'll talk to you soon. Hey everybody, so I know I'm taking you into our backyard for the very first time, and I thought I would just stop for a minute and give you a little bit of history on what we've actually done back here since we purchased this home exactly 10 years ago. When we bought the home, the only thing that was really here were two things. It was the pool, so that's existing, and then the retaining wall, and we'll get a better view of that retaining wall in just a bit as we kind of go through the backyard. But one of the things that we've come to realize is that with some of the construction that we've done and some of the construction that was done prior to us purchasing the home, we've got a drainage issue. And so we need to spend some time remediating that. And so one of the big parts of the project this spring is going to be helping make sure that we get water away from the backyard and out towards the yard that actually slopes into the city sewers. So I'm going to go ahead, take you through, show you exactly what the scope of the work will look like. We'll talk a little bit about what I enjoy doing in terms of plants and some of the things that you can expect to see as we get to that portion of the project, likely at the end of May or beginning of June. But let's start up here first. So we actually put this pathway in. That was actually something new. But these steps and this retaining wall here were existing. So these were put in by the previous owners. And I love how it works, actually. You come around the side of the house, you come down, and you really feel like you're part of a really cool backyard oasis. But you'll be able to see the challenges that we're having with these walls. So they're coming away. They were not installed properly when the previous owners contracted this out. You can see that the blocks are not interlocking, so they've kind of stacked them all in a row, which is a big no-no based on research that we've done. And you can see that the walls are actually starting to cave in a little bit onto the steps. So one of the things that we're gonna have to redo as part of the project this year is most of the retaining wall, probably up to this tree and over, and most of this wall, plus all of these steps, will need to be taken down and replaced. And so one of the things that we will be looking to do is actually reuse a lot of this stone because we don't want to replace the whole entire wall, and we don't want it to look like we've only replaced a portion of the wall. So a lot of this will be reused. And we're also going to try to reuse and recycle the steps, or the stone that was used in the steps. That will help make sure that we've got enough of the same stone to continue for continuity's sake in the coloring and in style. And we'll look to actually pour concrete steps. That'll be the replacement steps that we'll go ahead and use so that we're able to use some of the material here for the wall. So that's gonna be step number one. The other challenge we have as we come around here is the pool deck. So the pool deck, the concrete around the pool deck, not the pavers. So the pavers we actually put in the first year we were here, but the pool deck itself, you can see, is really starting to get worn. A lot of cracking here. There's actually some flaking up when we get closer to the other side of the pool. And then the other big problem that we've got is the pool cover. So love the fact that these covers are actually retractable and they come in and under. So there's a box that actually runs along this side of the pool that this pool cover rolls into automatically when we hit the button. Unfortunately, that pool box, or the box that the cover goes into, retracts into, was made out of wood about 25 years ago. And of course, you guys know what happens when wood is exposed to the elements. So water, wind, rain, snow for us in the Midwest. And this is a low point of the landscape. And so water pools where these pavers meet the actual pool deck. And so all of this water has essentially seeped into where the wooden box is, and the box has completely crumbled or rotted. And so we identified that problem at the middle of last season. So between the concrete that is crumbling, the pool box that is rotting, and the fact that we've got a drainage problem where the two hardscape patterns meet is a recipe for disaster. And so part of the project this year will be to rip out the entire concrete pool deck, go ahead, replace the cover box with the composite box, and then likely reconfigure some of the pavers as well. We're going to have to probably take out at least 2 feet of these pavers in order to form up the new pool deck. What you'll see on this side actually was grass when we first moved in. We landscaped it here, but it just doesn't flow anymore. Like I said, we've had a lot of trouble with water because this is a low spot, and the grading and the drainage was not tackled appropriately when we did the pavers about 8 or 9 years ago. And so we've got some weird kind of settling happening in here. And so we're likely going to be pulling out everything that's in here and replanting once we go ahead and get the pool deck and the pavers replaced. And so that will be a really big planting project that I'm actually super excited about. I love a good planting project. This is a pretty big space. And so over the course of 10 years, I've also learned a lot more. When we were landscaping this back in probably 2018 timeframe, I was just kind of getting my head around a lot of the different perennials, a lot of the different brands, a lot of the different types of annuals even that we like to use. And so I've got a much better design in mind in terms of what we want to do here to really create some continuity. On the top of these walls is much more of an English garden styled garden, and we'll see that through some of the footage that I'm sure we'll put up as part of this video. So I want this space to actually be much more grounded, not have as many different kinds of things, but the things that we do pick will make big statement, big impact. And of course, I always like to leave room for annuals. And so part of what I want to be able to do with this is leave at least 2 feet at the beginning, so like a border, where we can change things out every year, do different annuals, and really add different colors based on whatever design or whatever color palette we want to go ahead and use for each season. So that you can look forward to. And then if you keep coming around, you can probably see from this angle here, and I'll get out of the way so that you can see it on camera, part of that wall up there is actually collapsing in as well. So when you get in between the two large containers, almost to the chaise lounge, you'll see that part of that wall is actually leaning forward. And so we're gonna have to go ahead and pull out a majority of that wall as well. And it's kind of a big undertaking because there's tons of drip lines in there, there's speaker wires, there's landscape lighting wire. You can see we've got landscape lights on the wall. All of this is going to have to be pulled back. This whole section of the wall removed and then put in correctly. And we need to make sure that we're using the right kind of base 5, class 5 behind it. We need to make sure that it's actually being constructed in the appropriate way. They now have these really great like a webbing that goes back into the ground so that your walls, especially here in the Midwest where we get a lot of freeze and thaw, so a lot of frost, can really, create a lot of challenges that people who live in other parts of the country may not have. But there are tools and mechanisms and products that you can use to make sure that your wall stays perfectly straight. And so we're going to make sure that it's done correctly this time. The biggest thing, and you can see we've got a couple of drains here and one here. These were never done correctly either. And so there was perforated tubing that was used that I'm sure has collapsed because these don't drain well. And so we want to make sure that we're actually replacing all of that with PVC pipe and doing this the right way. So I think the other thing, just to highlight, we've got another big planting project behind the fence. we've actually taken out 2 trees. So we had a gigantic willow tree, and we'll pop up some footage so you can see what that looked like. Really hated to see it go, but here was the problem. It was about a 30-year-old tree, 28 to 30-year-old tree. Apparently willows only lived to about 35 years old, and we were starting to see some branching that was starting to need to be cabled because of just the weight of the branches themselves. And then we also had a challenge with some disease. And it was really hard to treat because the tree was so large. To be able to spray all the way at the top was almost impossible. So we had to make the really difficult decision to have that tree removed, and it has completely changed the aesthetic back here. That provided a lot of shade. We now are pretty much dealing with a full-on sun backyard, which with the pool is a great problem to have. But we also had to remove a birch tree over here because it was also diseased and we were having trouble with it. So we've got more sun than we've ever had back here. 2 things that helps us do. One, it gives us a fresh, clean palette to do some really fun landscaping projects. So I'm excited to pull up that island bed back there. We'll replant a really cool seedless maple. My biggest pet peeve is maples that actually throw those helicopters because they sprout up everywhere in your garden. So we'll make sure that we select a cool seedless maple for a replacement on the willow, but it'll also allow us to replant and do some fun things with more sun-loving plants than we've done, or that we could have done with the willow, because that needed a lot more shade. And the other thing that it allows us to do is, and this is actually, one of the silver linings in having to redo this concrete, is to think about what we need to do from an umbrella situation perspective, right? So we've got a couple small umbrellas here that are just on the wheels. Because we're pouring concrete, we can now build in big, strong supports that go deep into the concrete that will allow us to cantilever umbrellas to be installed without the large base, and provide a lot more shade for the times we want to have shade even over the chaise lounge or in other parts of the backyard and garden. So a lot going on. I'm gonna highlight a couple more things that are gonna be part of this backyard project. I think for the pool though, that's pretty much what's happening. These, just as a side note, these pots are a ton of fun, and I'm gonna be doing a video when we get ready to plant these. What's lovely about these planters is they look really heavy. They're not. They're actually made out of a fiber resin, which is extremely weather resistant in our climate. So we can leave them out pretty much all winter long. We just take the dirt down to about 2/3, and these have weathered great the last few years, but they're big, they make a big statement, and they're super fun to plant up. So we'll be tackling that in the next month or so. But over here, you can see on the back of the house here, and you guys are familiar with the screen porch because you see the tree that we put there every season, which is silver and white and crystal, the snowflake. It's a lovely spot for a tree because that actually is seen from our kitchen and from our dinette. But one of the challenges that we've always had with this screen porch are these stairs. And so we'd never used the stairs. The stairs, that was the one thing that kind of came with the house. But they are actually more of a visual block than anything. We always come down to the lower level and come out the sliding glass door. We never use these steps. And so we are gonna actually have these steps removed. Since we're doing all this paver work and all of the work around the pool, now's the time to actually go ahead, get these steps removed. We'll close off the screen porch up top, so there'll be no more door at the back of it. And then we'll have an opportunity to reconfigure this garden. Again, a lot of shade because of the steps. We're gonna have to replant, and we're gonna change the shape of the garden because we no longer need the space underneath the steps. We'll probably shrink the garden a little bit and fill this back in with pavers. I think the one other thing to call out is that we've always wanted to have a built-in kitchen out here. We're on the fence as to whether or not we'll actually get to the kitchen this year, but we are going to think forward, and we're gonna make sure that we're putting in the infrastructure for it. We're gonna have the concrete crews back here. They're gonna have concrete pumps coming up over the roof to be able to do all of this. Now is the time to be thinking about what we wanna do, and so we'll likely build in to this, cut into this bed a little bit and come off of this side of the patio with a built-in kitchen, or at least the foundation for a built-in kitchen. And then also toying with potentially putting in a like a half wall, like a wall about 4 feet tall behind this seating area. And so during the summer, there's actually chairs here, this sofa, there's tables. And one of the biggest problems we have is all of the debris that blows in from underneath the fence, from the orchard, and you end up with spider webs and leaves and grass clippings. And so we really think by putting, a 4 foot high just wall back here, right, that almost makes it feel like you're in an enclosed little room in your backyard, will help with all of the debris that tends to blow in. And it will mirror the same height as what we're doing over here with the outdoor kitchen. So that's, I think, kind of the last aspect of the scope of work that we will need contractors for, people who understand, concrete and masonry and all of the good stuff there. The last thing that we're going to take a look at while we have all of this ground open is where do we need drip line. So I'm a huge proponent of using drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is this right here. So rather than having to come through every single day with your hose and water your annuals and perennials, it's on a timer. So every day at 4 o'clock, 4:30 for me, all of the pots and the annuals get watered. And I've kind of had to jerry-rig some of this over the years because I couldn't get the zones that we use for our annuals, those that run every day for annuals, into all of the different beds. So like the beds that are over here underneath the steps, because we had all of these pavers and concrete, there was no way to actually run that line over. And we had to just tap into some of the existing perennial zones. And everyone knows you can't run your perennials and your annuals on the same zone. They have different water requirements. So now is the time to be thinking about that. Do we need to run any of that tubing over to these beds that have been kind of decentralized and unable to access? We're going to put PVC pipes underneath the concrete and pavers so that we can run those lines. Maybe it's landscape lighting, maybe it's speaker cords. All of that is what you want to be thinking about since they're going to have this torn up. So we're going to be looking at that across the entire backyard, making sure that all of that is now configured and programmed so that it just makes the maintenance of this so much easier. So that's the project. We're hoping to actually start taking out the concrete at the end of this week. So in about 6 days, they're gonna start tearing out the concrete around the pool. And then we're gonna take you guys along. Some of the videos might be shorter, some of them might be longer. You can definitely count on the fact that if we're doing any planting projects, I'm gonna take you guys along for that. So you can count on, for the next few months at least, a gardening or home renovation video each week, plus some sort of Christmas or Halloween video each week as well. So I'm committing to 2 videos a week. There might be weeks where we only get to 1, but I think it'll be important for us to kind of take you along on this journey. I'm excited to see how it turns out. I'm also a little bit nervous because it's been a really great backyard and a really great place to kind of decompress after the workday. And so we just want to make sure that this continues to be a place where we can recharge. So as always, happy decorating, and we're going to talk to you soon.